Mastering the basic urges is an aim common to both magicians and self-improvers. In Freudian terms, this has to do with controlling the id through the ego. In Qabalistic, is doing the same with your Ruach, Nephesh and Guf. Behavioral science and neuroeconomics view it as a balance between the emotional and rational mind. Also, between the reptilian or ancient brain and the prefrontal cortex, which is the reasoning brain. While working with the elements has its place for magicians, in my humble opinion, the groundwork for it can be what Napoleon Hill defined as mastering the three basic appetites, those for food, sex, and loosely organized opinions. After slightly touching on them in a newsletter, I'll elaborate on what I view as the ultimate tools for achieving such an outcome, and besides recent evidence, I'll also share some personal experiences. Before that, consider subscribing to the channel and my newsletter if you find the content valuable and entertaining. Know that this video covers the very basics, and if there's an interest, I can make a second part. Also, if not yet, soon my Patreon will be up and running, so that would be a great way to support me. Meanwhile, check my books such as my Gumroad and Etsy pages as they may contain helpful products. Removing delusions. There are 3 pieces of advice I'd give my younger self for controlling basic urges. 1. This concerns brain chemicals, internal reflections, and negotiation. The key is reconciling them gently as displayed on the Strand Tarot Trump, not punishing your animal soul as that backfires, producing the opposite result. 3. Although essential, willpower is mostly useless against our biology and primordial drives. It is fluctuating, fragile and limited, whereas those can be permanent and remarkably strong. And this is proven by scientists including Roy Baumeister, Michael Inslick, Kelly McGonigal, BJ Fogg, Judson Brewer and others. Avoiding the biggest mistake. Attempting to use willpower against your nephesh has various consequences. The most common are ego depletion, mental fatigue, defeat, and self-flagellation. As emphasized in Kelly McGonigal's The Willpower Instinct and Judson Brewer's Unwinding Anxiety, willpower may also be unavailable during stress, as the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for it, can shut down in such conditions. This means the reptilian brain has the upper hand, and you can think of that as your nephesh controlling your thoughts and actions. Given that, making this reconciling or mastering independent of willpower seems pretty reasonable. Keep the waters calm. In his Kabbalah Magick and the Great Work of Self-Transformation, the biohacker Liam Thomas Christopher likens the nephesh to a pool of water underneath the neshama or the sky above. Between them is the ego or ruach. Limited in its perception, the ego can only look down in the waters, reflecting the neshama's image. When the waters are calm, this image is clear, and when the ego tries to punish or force the nephesh into something, ripples or waves start forming, disturbing the image. Besides rendering you unable to perceive the neshama's signals, that can result in various phobias and conditions that are basically demons, and the same applies to childhood traumas beyond the scope of this video. Wanting the right things. Like the late Christopher Hart, Stanford professor Baba Schiff argues that the emotional brain makes about 90% of our decisions, which the reasoning brain merely justifies, and based on that, finding ways to make the nephesh want the right things seems an appropriate aim. Dopamine. Knowing that willpower isn't the way, controlling dopamine is the first step for controlling basic urges. With some caveats, controlling dopamine controls your nephesh. This means substituting instant gratification or cheap dopamine for long-term fulfillment and serotonin. On the contrary, it also doesn't imply dopamine is particularly bad. It is essential as it allows us to seek and crave, so the key is using it for the right things. Exercise. Without exaggeration, hitting the gym is the best for training your brain to delay gratification. One reason is that you must first do the work to see any result. Another is that it provides you a rush of good endorphins, endocannabinoids, and even dopamine. As Mark Stavish says, exercise reminds us we live in a saya, the world of action, and only by taking action, combining word and deed, can we make things happen, which is the goal of magic. Exercise also builds discipline, so when it comes to adopting a daily magical practice, that kinda feels like a piece of cake. Frank Zane calls bodybuilding the yoga of the West. Although I disagree with that vastly, as Kabbalah and magic have the place, I recognize there's some truth to it, as bodybuilding is extremely mental, training your mind in so many ways. That is why LHP scholars liken bodybuilders and fitness enthusiasts to following what Gurdjieff defined as the way of the fakir, and as found in Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit, quote, "Typically, people who exercise start eating better and becoming more productive at work. They show more patience with colleagues and family, and they use their credit cards less frequently and say they feel less stressed. Exercise is a keystone habit that triggers widespread change." Unquote. Getting your Nephesh on board. Dopamine is associated with motivation, determination, and grit. The lack of it relates to depression and apathy. Coupling pleasurable with constructive habits, techniques like temptation bundling and Primax principle avail of dopamine's power. They incorporate the productive or necessary with the purely pleasurable, and examples include watching Netflix or listening to music while cleaning or doing other chores, or getting rewarded by doing something pleasurable after something productive. This can be seen as doing what Kabbalah scholars define as getting your Nephesh on board. Also, what modern researcher and best-selling author James Clear calls making a habit irresistible. If you're new to it, you can also use such method to start exercising. And while they have their place, improving dopamine sensitivity is vital for controlling it. Dopamine sensitivity. Generally, desensitization is caused by stimulating too much dopamine for too long. And when that happens, the dopamine-sending neurons keep releasing the chemical, but the receivers no longer respond. Similar to the later covered insulin resistance, studies found this can occur quicker or slower based on your brain's vulnerability and intensity of use. Whatever the case, scientists agree frequent dopamine stimulation leads to desensitization, and in fact, some argue this is worse than fewer intense spikes. Meaning, fapping, conventional eating, social media, and smoking may be more addictive than coke or speed. Addictions must die. Given that controlling dopamine begins with listening to Don Webb's advice that addictions must die, this means eradicating self-destructive habits and diverting the energy toward productive ones, turning lead into gold like a true alchemist, and this may have a different start depending on your journey's current stage. Personal experience. 15 years ago, I began by giving up tobacco, gas, speed, and liquor. Later, I overcame severe fapping and food dependencies. Though seemingly different, all these do the same, triggering the brain's reward mechanisms abnormally. Starve your addictions. There are two important lessons I learned when quitting substance addictions. The first is that going cold turkey is the easiest and most painless way. By not fueling them, such an intervention makes substance addictions fade away. It is almost as if you start them until they eventually die. Feeling the emptiness. The second crucial is that the former requires substantial reasons and plan to keep you on track. If those are absent, you lose. And that is a combination of meaningful, engaging, and productive activities you actually enjoy. As later stressed, your Nephesh must also get something in return. If there isn't such a thing, you better first figure that out. Nothing should feel like giving up something and ending up with less, but as if trading one for another, or turning it into a better one, or perhaps even getting more. Mark Stavish likens giving up a substance addiction to freeing yourself from an egregore, and in that regard he says, quote, "A plan, purpose, and meaning for life is needed to fill the psychic and physical gaps that are left." Unquote. That not being the case creates a vacuum that nature despises, so it fills it however it finds most suitable, and most often that means relapsing. The bigger issues. Although drug abuse negatively impacts dopamine and the Nephesh, two issues are more ubiquitous: food and porn addictions. And actually, I'd argue that the reason they're so vastly misunderstood plays a role in people having drug and booze issues. In her lecture, All the Kabbalah You Really Need to Know, Soror Miriam Bat Asherah explains that unfed Nephesh is a recipe for disaster. While I wholeheartedly agree with that, thanks to science, we have powerful tools, so neither snacking nor willpower is required to control this aspect of the animal soul. Understanding hunger. No matter how food dependent, diabetic, and obese you are, change is available, and that is king for making it. The most crucial understanding about being hungry and obese is that this isn't because of lacking willpower. It results from an improper hormonal balance and particularly a condition called insulin resistance. The second in that order is that while many foods make you hungry, and some are specially engineered for that, specific ones suppress hunger. And to learn more about that, I offer my first book, such as the works of Dave Asprey, Peter Attia, David Perlmutter, and of course, Rob Wolf's War to Eat. Controlling insulin. Though that may sound oversimplified, controlling insulin controls hunger. This doesn't mean demonizing it. Ideally, it implies spiking it infrequently and strategically, supplying your body with good nutrients. Such a dietary intervention lets your inner kid enjoy a delicious meal. What elevates insulin is food, or if you prefer, calories, and what keeps it low is fasting. What conventional eating does to insulin is even worse than what it does to dopamine. It breaks it, causing insulin resistance, and besides obesity, diabetes, and a host of other issues, the latter also leads to leptin resistance. Coming from the Greek leptos or tin, leptin works like a brake for ghrelin, the hunger hormone, and when that chain is hijacked, you can stay hungry 24/7. Researchers found that often the bodies of obese people produce a lot more leptin, yet their receptors resist it, hence why they cannot manage their hunger and body weight. Understanding fasting. As one of the first to talk about its miraculous benefits on the web, I consider adopting the OMAD plan as the ultimate indicator for mastering hunger. Implementing it, however, requires patience, time, and adaptation. Simply put, you must let your body build the machinery for burning its stores through beta oxidation and no longer rely on snacking. As explained in my OMAD gains, combining 8-16 feeding window with zero-carb carnivore diet is unmatched for that. Yet, other protocols like keto and paleo may also be suitable. Elimination. How far you should go regarding elimination depends on how addicted you are to food, and the same applies to how long you should stay on such a diet. A zero-carb diet isn't something to necessarily do forever. It just works like magic for compressing your feeding window. Personal experience. Like many others, I couldn't wholly suppress my appetite without such a regimen. It also took me about a year to fully transition to OMAD. You may be different, so trust your empirical results and be honest with yourself. Hunger suppression through diet. Besides optimizing your hormones through good cholesterol, this accomplishes everything you need. It makes you burn fat for fuel while stimulating the release of peptide YY, PYY, and cholecystokinin CCK. When injected with those, mice and humans don't want to eat, but luckily this isn't required, and eating high fats and proteins produces identical results. Mysteries of the OMAD plan. The different types of physical activity, whether in molecules or masses, can be classified under two headings of anabolism and catabolism. That is to say, building up and breaking down process. Unquote. The unfortunate. Mystical Kabbalah. When doing OMAD, you alternate 23 hours of fasting with 1 hour of feeding, and while the latter spikes insulin, the former elevates glucagon. Secreted by the pancreas, insulin and glucagon oppose each other as the first builds, whereas the second destroys. Hence why the ketogenic researcher Benjamin Bikman likens them to yin and yang, whereas the unfortunate to Hesed and Gebura. Following a standard Western diet, society by large always keeps Gebura's metabolic representation from doing its thing, so we have an obesity pandemic and people struggling with permanent cravings. Ketosis. The more you fast, the more ketones your body produces and burns. Besides enhancing mental performance, blood ketones, beta-hydroxybutyrate suppress hunger, and more on that can be found in the works of Dominic D'Agostino, such as my first book. At around the 18th hour, you also reap the benefits of autophagy as identified by Dr. Jason Funk, and that is precisely what Gebura does, burning unwanted and excess stuff, which in this context is stored fat, damaged cells, toxic proteins, and even tumors. In return, you're getting younger and are not hungry, which is the goal. Mostly made of fat, the brain prefers mainly running on ketones, and based on mine and many others' experiences, keeping your body in such state substantially helps override primal impulses. The longer you sustain such a lifestyle, the more you enter deep ketosis, improving metabolic flexibility. This is your body's ability to burn carbs and fats equally efficiently. The more that is, the less often you need to eat, so the more satiated your nephesh stays all the time. Sex. Next to hunger comes mastering the desire for sex. Viewed as the strongest, the same can be used to conquer others as the main driving force of your self-improvement, and for the contemporary person, this begins with nofap. Besides removing delusions instilled by porn about what you should be attracted to and letting you fully own and express your sexuality, nofap starves your fapping addiction, balancing brain chemicals. Think of it as working identically to fasting and ketosis, but on another and more crucial aspect of your nephesh. Being one of the pioneers of both, I found OMAD and nofap have synergistic effects, working like an actual nootropic. Studies. When comparing the brains of alcoholics, gamblers, and drug addicts, scientists discovered their changes in gray matter are similar to those of people addicted to porn and junk food. The good news is that this is reversible. Moreover, researchers found that by abstaining from porn, you can actually grow gray matter above baseline. According to the same study, it takes about 250 days to recover completely, yet it is often recommended to go with about 315. By balancing brain chemicals and helping you rewire, this heals your brain. It also puts you in a very healthy and sober relationship with sex while improving your intimate life unimaginably, which is the actual thing your Nephesh craves. So there's plenty for it, although it may not realize it initially. Cyclical Celibacy. You can also implement cyclical celibacy. Often used in conjunction with nofap, this means alternating periods of having sex and orgasms with others of abstinence, and whether you should do that depends on how bad things are. So, be honest with yourself. In The Search of the Miraculous, Uspensky asks whether complete abstinence is required for sexual transmutation. Gurdjieff answers that this is only true for pathological cases and for a while, and once the person recovers, they should enjoy a healthy sex life. Personal experience. Sex was the main reason and tool helping me quit fapping, as that killed my erections identical to speed. Fapping and sex stimulate the release of very different chemicals. One is mainly dopamine, whereas the other is serotonin and oxytocin, improving well-being and calming the mind. On the other hand, restricting orgasms played an enormous role in completely rewiring my brain for how I viewed sex and my partners. It also helped me evade the emerging back then pickup culture, which, in my humble opinion, can be pretty harmful to both your Nephesh and conscious mind. Orgasms. Ancient Taoists have a formula for finding the exact number of orgasms for optimal health and performance. And according to the book Game Changers, that's your age minus 7 divided by 4. And what that gives you is the ideal number of days between ejaculations. Orgasms tend to lower testosterone while elevating prolactin in men, and this can result in less happiness, satisfaction, such as decreased performance. In the past I tried to avoid that, yet in recent years I found that keeping my lifestyle as it is while performing SIRP or Illyrian's OBW up to twice daily removes the need for it. Go figure. Yet it may be reasonable to mess less frequently with such rights before adopting the covered in this video. Sleep. Without getting too much into it, I cannot skip mentioning the importance of sleep, and the main reason is that not getting enough high quality cranks up all your cravings to an unimaginable degree. Studies show that sleep deprivation strongly affects the prefrontal cortex, which is how you reason, decision make, and self-regulate. And the thing to remember is that not time in bed, but quality is the most important. So use a sleep tracker to ensure that is on point. Meditation. Numerous studies show that daily meditation doesn't just balance brain chemicals, it also thickens the prefrontal cortex, decreasing lower brain activity. It does that through neuroplasticity, which is the physical adaptations your brain makes by rewiring neural connections and networks. In The Willpower Instinct, Stanford PhD Kelly McGonigal reveals that the simple fourfold breath technique massively increases self-control. She further notes that it trains the mind to handle various distractions and temptations, including cravings. Like Joe Dispenza and others, McGonigal adds that meditation helps quit any self-destructive habit and can help with forming new good ones via neuroplasticity. Therefore, it helps with all covered, and more on that can be found in my second book, Discipline or Something Else. Besides more self-control, as Regardi and Swami Vivekananda stress, meditation lowers the action in the default mode network, DMN. According to Buddhist teachings, this is basically the monkey mind associated with restlessness and confusion. Also with your inner critic telling you you're not good enough. Given that meditation doesn't just help control your basic urges, it also tunes down the worst parts of your ego as recognized in modern magic, and this is now confirmed by EEG and fMRI. The inner kit. Also remember that this whole process should be a collaboration with all parties being happy and vacuum or emptiness eliminated. Also that everything has its polarity. Fasting throughout the day is incomplete if you do not combine it with an epic and nutritious feast to make your inner kid happy. Fapping should be exchanged for quality sex, ideally with a meaningful partner. Drugs are to be replaced by the gym and other stimulating activities like learning skills, playing instruments, coding, martial arts, magic, drawing, and whatever else your inner kid is up to. Humans are meant to hunt, gather, build, destroy, and have real sex with an actual partner, not to watch porn, get sick, and rely on drugs. Much of balancing your animal soul comes from granting it what it really wants. Only then it will give you what you want, providing the unending drive to improve, Hill defined as burning desire. Modified asceticism. In my humble opinion, this accomplishes what Regardie defined as modified asceticism. It lets you reap some benefits of both Stoicism and Epicureanism while being a slave to neither, as neither serves the magician, according to Don Webb. Reflections. By looking deep within, after actually getting sober, you'll likely find your animal soul wants to enjoy food but hates craving it. It needs not porn but actual human interaction and sexual intercourse. It wants to do fun and engaging stuff and build, not damage the body. Our nature is to self-improve, and the animal soul plays a huge role in that, whether discipline gurus like it or not. It's really because of modern living and Western culture that things went wrong. This is a powerful way to get your Nephesh on board. By satisfying your inner kid constructively, you not only live a happier life, but also get to read your HJ signals better, especially when considering the analogy with the water pool, such as that the angel often speaks through the Nephesh, as in the words of David Shoemaker and Phyllis Sequer. Do not do it as a challenge or reset, depleting willpower only to revert to old crap and paradigms. Initiate a truly lasting and meaningful change and never look back. Final words. I found that conquering the first two appetites automatically masters the third, so likely there won't be a need for expressing loosely organized opinions, being cranky, or snapping at people for no reason, as these often result from low levels of satisfaction and blood sugar dysregulations. After reaching that point, you can channel what previously was craving for junk, fapping, or anything else toward productive aims and improving your life, and actually that becomes natural. And though going on a 6 or 18 months retreat may not be suitable for the modern person, these tools can help you reap similar benefits, elevating your consciousness. The same have been appreciated by all mystical traditions and religions, and they are now at your disposal without the need for sacrifice. But that's just my opinion. Let me know what yours is, such as how I did with this video. Otherwise, like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more content like this, check my other works and books, especially the digital products I make on Etsy and Gumroad. If not yet, pretty soon my Patreon will be up and running, so that would be a great way to support me. I'll see you in the next one, and thank you for your time.